I was watching all of the kind of the election fraud hearings and online, doing the mathematical stuff online, and to me, it was rigged completely beyond the shadow of a doubt. And maybe some would say, well, you know what, it doesn't matter because everybody does it, but that is, I think, at the core of
Well,
one of the major
you're describing
problems
the
of
reason why it happened, right? If you're concerned with the reason, it's because people have been misled into believing that the election was rigged.
no.
Well, I mean, so I just want to say, if you actually believe the election was stolen, there are some Trumpers who think that Trump got 110 million votes and Biden got 30 million or something, which is it's insane. But there are people who believe that. If you actually believe that, then the subsequent belief that you should storm the Capitol and do anything possible to overturn the election results is a fairly rational belief. In your mind, you're saving democracy. The fact of the matter is, it's just there's no evidence that the election was rigged. So all of the subsequent yammering is not rooted in a rational set of beliefs. We need to argue the empirics here, because if you presuppose the election was rigged, then you can justify a lot.
Right, but the evidence was never heard.
Well, yeah, it was. They had 50 court cases.
But they never heard evidence. They were all
because there was no evidence. There was no evidence to hear. They would show up in these court cases. Rudy Giuliani would say, "I'm not alleging fraud," and then they would just fuck around for a couple of days until things got settled.
I'm just telling you, I'm a pretty educated guy. I've got 4 degrees, and I've watched this stuff from beginning to end. I've watched the hearings. I've watched the evidence. I've dissected the YouTube videos of this guy Ed Solomon that shows this fractionation, how the whole thing was done. It was done rather ingeniously, but in my mind, there's no question that there was a total fraud operation that was done with many people involved, and each person had a little piece of it. And there's a lot of people that feel like me, and maybe
Well, I agree there are people who feel like you, which is very unfortunate. But what evidence would you cite? I'm familiar with most of the conspiracy theories. It's possible that you know of some YouTube video that I haven't seen or that I don't have an answer to. But so many people, the Department of Homeland Security chief has said that this is the most secure election in recent history. With all the court cases that have taken place, there's just no evidence seems to have come to light. The idea that this is a huge conspiracy that managed to completely fuck over Trump in spite of all the support that he's gotten over the past 4 years seems pretty unlikely compared to the idea that there just wasn't any fraud.
Right, and that's because people despise Trump so much they're unwilling to look at the evidence, and the people that are against him.
What evidence aren't they looking at?
Well, if you look, the algorithm for the way that the election was stolen from a software standpoint has been deconstructed.
I'm familiar with what you're about to say. So there's a numerical algorithm which states that a large sum of numbers generally has a pattern that arises when you look at the first number of every one in a given sequence. I remember this argument. This was one of the first ones that came up. I think a mathematician at a university came out and explained in great detail how this doesn't apply, and it's not even applicable to the situation.
No, it completely applies because the guy who deconstructed it is the world's expert in this particular type of math.
I don't know what you mean by who.
But that's one piece of. That's just one piece of it. There's multiple pieces to it.
Well,
one piece of it, yeah.
So I'm just saying there should only ever be one piece to it. Generally speaking, the way these cases work is you find one really compelling piece of evidence, and then you bring it to court, and if there are no answers to it, you bring it further and further, and then it goes up to the Supreme Court. The issue is that the Trump administration has taken a scattershot approach where they've fired a million random pieces of bullshit at the wall to try and get as much public support as possible. But you notice, in public, they will make incredible claims about fraud, but in the actual courtroom, they shut the fuck up because it's not legal to lie to a judge. So in the courtroom, all of a sudden it's, we're not alleging fraud. No, we just want to have you hear our 6,000 affidavits. But out in public, they make ridiculous claims. The reason for this is because the evidence just isn't there. They're looking for a public, fundraising project. Trump raised hundreds of millions of dollars to pay down campaign debts. Half of all the money that went to the Stop the Steal fundraiser that he was going went to his campaign debts. It was all a big grift.
Right, so why are they hiding all the voting machines from electronic analysis?
They're not hiding the voting machines for electronic analysis.
Yeah, one set of machines got analyzed, Antrim County, Michigan, and they saw that there was a software that was switching votes. That's the only time.
They didn't, though. If there was actual evidence that software was switching votes, don't you think a journalist would have, like, caught on to it? This would be the biggest story in, like, American electoral history.
Which journalist is going to step out? Someone from CNN or MSNBC?
Well, there are independent. There are independent journalists, and also, what about, like,
and they're all there.
Wall Street Journal or The Economist or The Federalist? Like, there are this would be a Pulitzer-winning paper.
I'm telling you, it's going to come out in books. It's all going to be described, but, you know, so...
I'm sure there will be books about it, but why wouldn't a journalist break this story? Like, if it actually is the case that millions of votes were moved, this should be pretty easy to track. I mean, there are a lot of moving parts in this. Biden won by 7 million. If you really believe that Trump got more votes than Biden, then we're dealing with a kind of scale that should have been detectable.
Let me just ask you a basic question. This is also with the Atlanta election the other day. Why should someone, you know, have votes show up and then all of a sudden 2 seconds later they have like 20,000 votes less? Why should that ever happen?
I'm not sure what you mean. They have votes show up, but like there's a sudden shift in...
Yeah. Like if you just watch like the CNN videotape from the election night, or even the election video from like the Atlanta, whatever, the Georgia runoff last week.
Do you mean when the decision desk from Associated Press?
As the tabulations are coming in, you see the votes getting updated. In one moment they're 225,000, and the next moment they're 205,000. Now maybe there's a reason for that, but that also happened in other occasions in the general election. Why should
so like Trump votes suddenly got deleted?
Yes. Well, or Purdue votes. Just take Purdue or Trump votes. Yeah, Trump votes.
Well, there could be a number of reasons for that. So first of all, we're not talking about the actual tally. We're talking about the press's report of that tally, which means that if there are any errors or any consolidation errors in particular, or if there are multiple journalists that are corroborating information and they find that there's actually an overlap in the segments or the jurisdictions that they covered numbers for, like there are many possible explanations. It could also, be the case that there was just a legitimate typo. That does happen. That's what happened with the Associated Press or Decision Desk HQ error that led to that wonderful graphic of the two snakes turning around where the Biden one suddenly jumps up at the last second. That wasn't actually from the electoral count. That was just from a decision desk error that was immediately corrected. And I mean, additionally, if you really think there's some grand conspiracy to fuck with this, like this should be trackable. All of these ballots can be post-dated. Like you can find where they came from. You can track down these numbers. If it was a big conspiracy, why would they ever like let the 20,000 missing votes be reported, then delete them? Like, I don't know. That's pretty sus, right?
Nobody's cared. Nobody cares. It's all happened, and nobody's cared.
Well, but they do care. Wait, but they stormed the Capitol because they care. They clearly do care.
Well, those people care, but the people in the mainstream media don't care, and the government officials don't care because they just want Trump out.
I feel like if the government officials were going to go far enough as to commit the greatest electoral crime in American history because they want Trump out, they would probably take the extra precaution of not being that obvious with their fraud.
Yeah, I don't think they care.
Okay, I mean,
I don't think they care because I think the machine that they have is so enormous it just doesn't matter.
I wish they had also rigged the votes on the congressional elections and the state legislature elections. That would have been. I wish they had gone all the way because we kind of lost quite a bit of ground outside the Senate and the presidency.
What you saw in the congressional elections is what happened in the general election, but it basically just got defrauded.
Damn. I guess I'm just gonna have to wait on evidence for that.
Right, and then so the other half of that is once you fix the numbers with the algorithm, then you have to stuff the ballots to match the numbers. That's the only way to do it, and that's where all the ballot stuffing came in.
Well, but there was no ballot stuffing. What do you mean by ballot stuffing?
Well, that means that's where you have like this 100,000 ballots disappear in Pennsylvania, and just nobody knows where it is from the.
That didn't happen. How could 100,000 ballots just disappear like that?
Well, I asked the postal service truck driver who transported them.
No, I have. It's just the thing you're describing didn't happen. Well, like let me ask you, where did you get that story from?
There was a postal worker driver that was on Tom. I don't know. It was I forget the name of the organization, but they had a press conference and they interviewed this guy who said he picked up a trailer full of ballots and drove them to Pennsylvania, and they disappeared. Basically.
Wait, so he was driving them and the contents of his truck just vanished, or
the whole truck vanished? The whole truck vanished.
Like he got out to use the restroom and it vanished?
No, he parked it at the facility, and he came back the next morning to get his truck, and it was gone. I
suppose I'd have to look at that.
Yeah.
So wait, if the powers that be have the ability to just alter vote totals after the fact, why would they resort to such clumsy methods as trying to physically disappear?
Because the ballots don't have the ballots don't have people's names on them. They're anonymous ballots. You can take any ballot from New York and you can ship it to Georgia and use the same ones. It doesn't matter. Once you take the ballots out, you can't connect them with the person that voted.
Wait, no, that's not true. They're serialized. There are numbers that you can track them.
Yeah, but there's no names on them.
Yeah, but
there's no names. No. Once you take them out of the envelope, there's no way. There's no serial number on the envelope that matches the ballot.
They can be tracked though.
They can't. That's the whole beauty of the ballot stuffing thing.
Wait, no,
you cannot track
just because you don't have a signature doesn't mean that these ballot serial numbers can't be tracked back to the locations they were produced and distributed from.
No one has ever looked at those ballot numbers.
Yeah, they are. That's how you track them after they no longer have their signatures attached.
It's never been looked at.
Do you think the government uses your signature to identify you? Nobody can use signatures. Aren't a means of identification. They're like a formality. Nobody's signature is consistent enough to be registered into 100 million person strong database of registered voters. You use serial number.
Right, but the laws of the states require signature matching, and that in many cases is not done.
Depends on the state. Different states have different laws and different ballots too. Every state, it's endowed in the Constitution as every state's right to manage their elections on their own terms.
No, we could probably talk about this whole election thing all night, and it doesn't really matter because it's over with. But this is, the way I feel. There's many people that feel the way I do, and I fortunately I had some time and I watched the whole thing. And I'm an educated guy. I've got multiple degrees, so I can understand putting complex things together. And it just, I'm just sad over the whole thing. I'm sad for the country.
I'm sad. I'm sad too. I wish people who supported Trump weren't, I guess, this easy to lead around with a carrot. I mean, I don't know.